Bipartisan senators officially file revised marijuana banking bill ahead of key committee vote. A revised bipartisan marijuana banking bill has officially been filed in the Senate, 1 week before a key committee is scheduled to vote on the legislation. But its prospects in the GOP controlled House remain uncertain, with the key committee chairman declining to say whether he'd take up the legislation if it crosses over to his chamber. The renamed Secure and Fair Enforcement Regulation Banking Act, aka now SAFER, sponsored by Senators Jeff Merkley and Steve Daines, was introduced on Wednesday, 1 day after Marijuana Moment first reported on the finalized language. The amended bill is the product of months of negotiations as senators work to build bipartisan buy in and get it in passable form. It's set to receive a markup in the Senate Banking Committee on September 27th. After that point, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said he intends to bring it to the floor with all due speed. In a joint statement shared with Marijuana Moment on Wednesday, Schumer, Merkley, Daines, and Senator Kristen Sinema and Cynthia Loomis applauded the bill's introduction. This legislation will help make our communities and small businesses safer by giving legal cannabis businesses access to traditional financial institutions, including bank accounts and small business loans. It also prevents federal bank regulators from ordering a bank or credit union to close an account based on reputational risk. We look forward to the markup of this bill in the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs on September 27th. The majority leader also said in a separate statement on Wednesday that he is committed to attaching legislation on incentivizing state level cannabis expungements and restoring gun rights for medical marijuana patients. Specifically, he said he would move to add the Harnessing Opportunities by Pursuing Expungement HOPE Act and Gun Rights and Marijuana Act to the final legislation, aka the Graham Act. Let's see. Let's actually talk about what they did. Here are some of the key changes from the previous Safe Banking Act. In Section 7, the Safer Banking Act omits earlier language preventing federal regulators from taking action that discourages financial institutions from working with state legal marijuana businesses. However, Section 10 of the bill now spells out how regulators must broadly have a valid reason for requesting or requiring the termination of bank accounts for any business. It was revised to give the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation 1 year rather than 180 days to develop guidance for financial institutions serving state licensed marijuana businesses. The original bill said that income derived from state legal cannabis business activity couldn't be used to deny federally backed mortgages. That's been revised to say that standard applies to a covered mortgage. A new example of such a covered mortgage is one that's acquired or purchased by a federal home loan bank or pledged as collateral for an advance from a federal home loan bank. Section 10 has expanded, for example, to include a sense of Congress language stipulating that the personal and political beliefs of financial regulators should not influence their decision making. The legislation would newly require federal banking regulators to work with state banking supervisors and the Secretaries of Commerce and Treasury, and within 2 years of enactment, from rules or guidance to increase access to deposit accounts for businesses and customers, and to enable banks and credit unions to more effectively maintain customer relationships, especially for those in rural, low, and moderate income areas, tribal communities, and unbanked businesses and consumers. There's a new requirement for the FDIC to conduct a biennial survey and report to identify barriers to accessing deposit accounts of small and medium-sized businesses. Further, the bill has been revised to include explicit mention of tribal communities in Section 11, which requires federal regulators to submit a report to Congress on access to banking for historically underbanked communities. Tribes are now listed beside minorities, veterans, women, and small state-sanctioned cannabis businesses as subjects of the report, which is not the case in the current Safe Banking Act as introduced. While required reports on data concerning small and minority, veteran, and women-owned businesses are still in the bill, the phrase diversity and inclusion has been removed from the relevant section titles. All told, it appears that the proposed revisions could satisfy both sides of the aisle, with Section 10 kept intact, as Banking Committee member Senator Kevin Cramer said this week, but also with new provisions to promote equity in the financial system. Senator Jack Reed, who also serves on the Banking Committee and previously raised concerns about Section 10, has also said that senators talked extensively about the language and we've made some progress. I think we've resolved most of the issues we had and hope we have so we can get it out of the committee with a strong vote. But again, the House under Republican control is another matter. Representative Patrick McHenry, who chairs the House Financial Services Committee, where the cannabis banking bill would likely be referred, is in supportive of the reform. And he gave a non-committal response to Punchbowl News about how he'd approach the bill if it ended up in his panel's jurisdiction. He said simply that he looks forward to seeing the markup, adding that he's happy to talk with Senate leaders about the legislation, but he also has policy I've originated too. Yada yada yada. I do believe this will pass the Senate. I know people think I'm nuts, that there's no chance in hell for anything to pass. I think these guys have lined up enough ducks in a row to get this thing through the Senate. The question now is the House and Jason's favorite pack of the Freedom Alliance, or whatever the hell they call themselves.
The Freedom Caucus.
Yes, the Freedom Caucus. Are they going to allow SAFE to come through? We will see. This is Gretchen for High 9 News.
The Freedom Caucus will allow it to go through. That is for sure.
You think they will?
Yeah, I'm not worried about that part.
All
I'm not
right,
worried
well,
about
they
that
seem to
part.
be
You know what
bitching.
I'm actually more worried about, Gretchen? I'm more worried about the Democrats in the Senate trying to throw in too many social equity provisions, because I've heard that they've already started with that. And as you know, that's going to be a non-starter for a lot of Republicans on this.
I hear you. However, I think Chucky is tired of looking like a dipshit who can't get shit passed. And so I think he is leaning heavily on his people to get in line behind this. He might not have all the votes, but he has enough Republican support to get it done. So as Schumer is going around town trying to tout that this is his bill now, that he has fixed it, it's ready to go. So for him to be making those types of statements, I think it's going to happen.
Okay.
And I wanna piggyback on what this beautiful sister just said. And the moment you hear Chuck Schumer put his name on anything, for sure, it's because he got his ducks in a row. It's not like before, because even before when they was
before
no
he was
one
going to
wanted
have
to
a
take
bill
hold of it.
on 420, and he didn't even have that together. He's called the shots and busted his load tons of times, and
Now
with
watch
nothing.
this though. Look, watch this though. We wasn't in the middle of a time where Democrats couldn't raise a hand in a library full of people who know how to read. So at the end of the day, they need something in order to change what they've done to everything else. So this specifically, I feel like they're going to make sure that they get through, because they need some type of W to bring to the table. And they feel like this is significant enough with African American and Latin voters that they can try to pander votes again. So to them, this is very significant. This is not just something that he's just willing to let fly by like as before. And we do have enough people on the right that have considered and are supportive. So I believe that this can go.
I'm with you. I'm just saying I don't have a lot of faith in Senator Schumer
Me either.
at all.
I'm just saying I believe it can.
And anytime he's saying that something is a go, then that's telling me that it's not a go, because that's just how he operates.
I trust Jason Beck more than I do him. So
See what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Exactly.
I think the house is full of petulant children, and there ain't shit going to happen there with those guys. And you can call them whatever you want, Jason. They're a bunch of petulant little shits that want to have a fit and get what they want, and they're going to torpedo things. This is just going to be a shit show coming up over the next 30 to 45 days. I don't think anything's going to get done.
I love
Too
torpedoes.
much caucus in the Freedom Caucus.
I love
Well,
torpedoes.
and I agree a bit with Dale there. I'm concerned that these guys, because of Chucky Boy putting his name on this and pretending it's his job, are going to say F Chuck Schumer, and they're not going to pass it. So if these people are that stupid and are willing to fuck with us that much, it is time for the cannabis lobby to get behind getting those assholes out of Congress.
I agree with that. I think we should
Okay.
primary
They should have been
AOC.
did that. The cannabis lobby
Yeah.
should have been focused more so on supporting and being more supportive of individuals that we knew that was gonna agree with at least trying to find a path towards legislation and had an actual plan towards finding a path towards legislation. Not just somebody who's going to say, oh, I'm for marijuana, I smoke weed with my friends because it's legal over here or whatever, and then it's like just one person in the house or one person in the Senate who's just saying it. We just need people to be like, this is what I'm running on. And I believe one of my policies specifically is to make sure we legalize marijuana and we fix what we've done with the criminal justice system in terms of how we've targeted individuals for simply having a plant that does nothing to you.
I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all.